A significant minority of kids in schools across the country experience a very particular feeling day after day, year after year, very consistently. This is a feeling that has serious and measurable consequences. It's the feeling that the door to success in life is closed. I want to share with you the perhaps surprising results of my research into a tool that can help remove that feeling and start transforming the life chances of many of those kids. Because we just might be missing a critical piece of the jigsaw of why kids from low-income families tend not to thrive at school. Did you know that kids from persistently low-income families are fully 2 years behind everyone else at school? 2 years. And for every 10 kids from low-income families, 6 leave school without a decent set of GCSE results. 6 out of every 10. Those are quite shocking statistics. And kids from homes with lower family income tend to have poorer mental health, they tend to be more stressed, they're half as likely to go to university and a quarter as likely to go to one of the more selective universities. So this is a big issue. But why is it? Well, there are lots of reasons. Lack of access to the better schools, fewer educational resources at home, and so on. These types of structural issues are really important, but I don't want to talk about them here. What I want to talk about are the very real and very insidious effects of this feeling that the door to success in life is closed. So let's delve into that. I want you to imagine yourself when you were a teenager. Now, for some of you, that'll be really straightforward because you are a teenager. But for some of you, it might be less straightforward, but I'll say no more. Now I want you to imagine that your parents are only just coping financially. So they might be on benefits, they might be working long hours in multiple low-paid jobs, they might be on insecure contracts. You look around and it's the same for everyone in your neighbourhood. Nobody in your social circle has done well in their GCSEs, nobody has been to a high-profile university, nobody's a doctor or anything like that. This is the reality of your world. Now, you want to do well at school, you want to thrive at school, of course you do. You might want to go to a good university, but you certainly want to get a satisfying, well-paid job. But there's a big problem. All the signals around you are assuring you with great clarity that that's just not going to happen. Your friends, neighbours, parents, teachers, even the media, they just don't expect you to do well at school because kids like you don't do well at school. So here's the narrative that might be going on inside your head. I want to do well at school, but people like me just don't do well at school. Every time I take an exam, I'm thinking, here we go again. I'm going to get another rubbish mark. I'll never be any good. And my life is just mapped out right there in front of me. This internal dialogue is driven by the very prevalent stereotype that kids from low-income families don't do well at school. And there's a name for it. You might have heard of it. It's called stereotype threat. Stereotype threat is the fear that you'll conform to a negative stereotype that people have of a group that you belong to. It makes you stressed, it makes you lose confidence in yourself, it makes you feel like you've got no control over your life. It makes you feel like a failure. Basically, it's crap. And in fact, it's seriously crap. Research suggests that stereotype threat is a significant factor in why a lot of kids don't thrive at school. So what can we do? Well, psychologists have figured something out that can act as a powerful antidote to stereotype threat. It's called values affirmation. It's based on a very simple idea. Values affirmation is where you reflect on something important in your life. A good friend, a family member, your religion or your football team, that might be the same thing. Your love of dance, something important in your life that's good and solid. A mother who's your rock, or the feeling of sheer exhilaration when you play your favorite sport. This can help kids from low-income families and suffering from stereotype threat feel, have more perspective in school. It can give them the sense that they're more than just their stereotype, that they're an individual with a rich set of resources within and around them. They start to gain confidence in themselves, they start to feel a sense of agency in their life, and they start to do better at school. Now, a couple of years ago, nobody actually knew if values affirmation could help kids from low-income families do better in schools in England. So I tested it. I ran a study, a randomized controlled trial, with 562 secondary school students aged between 11 and 14. 3 times throughout the school year, during normal class time, English teachers gave all their students a 20-minute writing exercise. For half the students chosen at random, The exercises asked them to write about a neutral topic. They were the control group. But for the other half, the exercises asked them to think of something important in their life and to write about why it was important. So what did those students write about? Well, I can't give you actual quotations, so I've blended together some of the sorts of phrases that came up quite often. So this will give you a bit of a flavour. Have a look. So you can see these are things that really mattered in their life, and they often wrote about them in a lot of detail, something you don't get a feel for from these very short snippets. And this ability to reconnect with things important in their life gave them a sense that they're much more than just their stereotype. They started to see themselves as individuals with these rich resources and identities available to them. But this was just 3 lots of 20 minutes across the year, just an hour. So did it make any difference? Let's have a look. At the end of the year, the students took a survey where they reported how stressed they felt. So let's look first at the control group, the ones who wrote about a neutral exercise. As you can see, the students from the low-income families tended to report that they were more stressed than their better-off peers, and that's kind of unfortunately what you would expect. But what about the kids who did the values affirmation exercises? Look at the green box on the right. Now, the eagle-eyed among you might just have noticed that for the better-off students, it hardly made any difference. But you wouldn't expect it to. They weren't experiencing stereotype threat. What about the kids from low-income families? That is a big difference from just 3 lots of 20 minutes. Wow. So values affirmation can be a big help in reducing stress for these kids. What about exams? Let's have a look at the results of maths exams that the students took at the end of the year. And again, we'll look first at the control group, the ones who wrote about the neutral exercise. So again, you can see there's a big gap between the students from low-income families and their better-off peers. That's about half a standard deviation, or 11% in their end-of-year maths exam. That's a substantial difference, but not surprising, given the national picture. So what about the kids who did the values affirmation? Again, you can see that for the better-off students, it hardly made any difference. What about the kids from low-income families? They closed that gap with their better-off peers by nearly 2/3, nearly 2/3. That is a huge effect for such an apparently simple intervention. So maybe this intervention isn't so simple after all. Maybe reconnecting with what's important to them can be really quite powerful stuff for some of these kids. So that's the study. What does it tell us? Well, some people might think that kids from low-income families tend not to do well at school because they're lazy, they're disruptive in class, their parents don't value education, or maybe they're just not that bright. But these results suggest a very different picture. What if they're facing a barrier that everyone else is lucky enough not to have to deal with? Stereotype threat. And if thinking about what's important to them can shift that out of the way, then they can start doing what everyone else takes for granted, achieving to their potential and going on to lead a happy and productive life. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is one school, one age group, 1 year. There's a lot of work to be done to find out if the benefits of values affirmation and interventions like it can be replicated in different schools, in different contexts. We need a lot more research to figure that out, and I'm dead keen to play my part in it. Because if the benefits of these kinds of low-cost interventions can be replicated, then schools need to be using them. Let's get to work to start transforming the life chances of some of the most disadvantaged kids in our society. Thank you.